Hi, sorry about that. I'm trying to get on to my guest, Mr. Mokwenye. He's a Nigerian author, freelancer, agriculturist, and so much more. But I don't know what's going on. I touch every possible button, but I don't know. Yes, I sent in the invite. I sent him an invite, but Yes, can you hear me? Hello. Try the live broadcast and okay, I'm getting through now. This it's adding you. First time I see that. That will be good. Yes, I think you're going to come on now. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm hoping.
I hope so.
Hey, I'm not seeing you still,
I
but
can see you though.
oh, you
I can
see.
see you, but I can hear you.
Well,
No,
you
I
seeing
can't
me
see
and hearing me, but I'm still not
you.
seeing you. But that's
I can't
okay.
see you. I can hear you though.
Oh, very good. I touched something and it
Yeah.
say adding, so maybe I missed that on all the interviews I had. But okay, so welcome to
Can
Chatterbox
you see
Chronicles
me?
Life at 5.
Can you see me?
No, I'm not seeing you. I'm hearing you. Oh,
I
bring them
can hear
on
you
camera just now.
too.
Okay, just now. It said to bring you on camera, but let me see. Let me see if I press this add. I hope I'm adding you. Oh no, I'm adding somebody else. Oh no, sorry. Oh gosh, I didn't press your name. Wait. Bring to camera. So many things. Sorry, Natalie.
Hey, what's up?
Sorry, Natalie. That was just a mistake.
Hi.
You fine? How you
I'm
guys
trying
doing?
change. I'm
I
fine.
won't
Change
work.
profile block
I
user.
won't work, so you fine. I'll come
Oh
out.
oh. I
Good
wonder
to
if
see
I'm
you,
supposed.
though.
Good to see you.
I
Although
can
I'm
hear
not
you
seeing you,
guys
but good to
fine.
hear
Glad
you.
to see you.
Thank you. I know I don't hear you. You're right.
Can you see Natalie?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Bring
Hazel.
them on camera.
I'm fine. How you
Hmm?
doing?
Hazel.
Yes, he is.
Can you see Natalie? Yeah. Can you see
No, I'm not seeing
Natalie?
Natalie. No, I'm only hearing Natalie. I'm
I'm
trying
hearing
to bring
from
you
you.
on
I can
camera
hear
You're
just
Natalie.
hearing
now.
me because I only clicked the audio. I didn't click video.
Oh,
So if you
I'm
click video,
not
it will show the
even showing
person.
video. I just seen
I'm
2x and
not
it
sure what
marked
I
remove,
see.
remove.
I can see him.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Yeah, I
see
can
me,
see
right?
you
Increasing
and I
it.
can see Hazel. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, at
You
least you
can
all
see
can see
Hazel.
me, so that's good.
We can see
But I
we can hear.
cannot see you all. I can only hear. I don't know why.
I can hear you, but I can't
Oh,
see you.
Yeah.
I
It's
hear
okay.
you
Okay.
guys.
Well, I'm
it's
gonna
saying bring
log off so y'all can continue.
it's saying bring you on to camera, but when I press it, you're not coming on. So I don't know why.
Could we
You see?
could you try again?
Yeah, I'm
And see.
trying all now. I'm trying. I'm pressing the button, but nothing is happening. But maybe we should just do it. But I mean, I can hear you. So, and if I turn the camera, then okay. Wait, just now, let me see something.
Wait, there's
Wait.
I just saw something now.
Yeah, I
There's this
pressed something there. Ask Natalie to
wait, let me see.
join. No,
I think
not Natalie. Not Natalie.
oh, okay, it's my camera so
Ask Natalie. No, it only say Natalie. I saw your little picture up there, and I pressed it, but you disappear. Natalie picture still there. That is just weird. I don't know. These modern day
you scroll
telephones is
down.
too much. Hmm? It's too much. I cannot take it. It's too much. Anyway, that's okay. At
See
least you're
from me.
here, so that's great. And everybody else
Yeah,
can
yeah.
see you. So that's good. So welcome to Chatterbox Chronicles Life at 5. Um,
Thank you.
thank you for coming on. Can you state your name and where you're from, please? And where you're at now?
Okay. My name is Ais Mokwenye, but I go by the pen name Farastein Mokwenye. It's a nickname I got in high school. Somehow it stuck, and it's been my alias all these years. I'm from Nigeria. I'm from a little town called Ila in southern Nigeria. It's of the Igbo extraction, so I'm from the Igbo ethnic group in Nigeria. Currently, I'm in the UK studying for my master's in business
Oh,
management in Birmingham.
wow, that sounds exciting. From Nigeria to the UK. How are
Yeah.
you coping with the different moving from Africa to being in the UK? Is it a lot different, or are you
No,
having any hardships over there, like weather-wise and stuff like that, or is it just easy for you?
um, May 18th made it 1 year since I've been here
Right.
so far. I've been
Even
here for a total of
already,
1 year. Yeah, I've been here for a total of 1 year.
time
So
really
far,
flies.
it it flies. But
Hmm.
luckily for us, we are the pilots, as they say. So
Hmm.
so far for me, it's been fun. It's been fun in the sense that because I've always had this curious mind. So
Hmm.
coming here over to the let's say like for example now it's summertime and the sun
Right.
sets in the UK in around 10 p.m. So that
Yes, like in
was
New
the very
York.
first that was that was the very first culture shock I
Yes.
got because where I'm from in the tropics, 7 p.m. it's pitch black. It's night time and
Yes.
there's equal number of sunlight, equal hours of sunlight year in year out.
Hmm.
Essentially 12 hours every day. But coming over here to see how the hours of sunlight change with the season was really
Yeah.
interesting for someone like me because I'm really interested in stuff like geography. I'm interested in map reading. All my life, I've always been intrigued by maps and stuff like that. So to see it on the ground, I've always read all of this stuff on paper. Oh, winter
Hmm.
time. Oh, I had no idea what exactly it meant. Yeah, daylight saving. So coming here to experience it for the very first time.
Yeah.
Coming here, I've heard British accents in movies and all of that, but coming here to listen to the folks speak is way different than it is in the movie. So so far it's been a very enjoyable experience for me. There are some things I thought of the British that I had like
Hmm.
for example, one it's shocking how like most of the British cuisine in terms of dishes, food, it lacks like there's no spice. It's shocking to me because where I'm
Hmm.
from, our dishes are very spicy. So coming over
Hmm.
here to the UK, I'm finding that it's a different culture entirely, a different way
Yes.
of
Yes.
life.
Hmm.
Yeah. In terms of let's say for example now the culture they have with time. Time is very sacred here.
Yes.
10 a.m. is 10 a.m. Unlike as it
Hmm.
is back home in Nigeria where I'm from. 10 a.m. in Nigeria is 10 a.m. to 10:20 a.m. Anything within that range is fine. But over here, 10 a.m. is 10 a.m. So interacting with people here, and I really love how the British society in general is very, what would the right term for it now? Would I say cosmopolitan? Like everyone like from every culture basically is in the UK. So being here in the UK, I've met Indians, I've met Pakistanis, I've met
Hmm.
Sri Lankans, I've met Bengali people, I've met Americans, I've met French people, I've met people from Africa that I've never met in Nigeria, and these are both nations in Africa. I've met Senegalese people, I've met Zimbabweans, I've met South Africans. So I really like how it's almost as if the UK is almost like a microcosm of the entire world in some ways. I
Yeah.
believe I read some weeks ago how London London is believed to be one of the most diverse city in the entire world, where basically you would find someone from every nationality in the entire world in London. So there's
Mm.
somebody from let's say there's somebody from Turkmenistan from or someone
Yeah.
somebody from Lesotho in London currently. It's shocking. Everyone is in London
Yeah.
basically.
I think you will
It's very
find that too in a lot of countries you go to, even in Trinidad, we have a lot of Africans there. Like mostly every day I meet somebody from Africa, some part of Africa. Yeah, so it have even when you if you go to the US, and well, I've never been to Europe as yet, but most places, you could meet somebody from any part of the world, because
Yeah,
and our country as well is so cosmopolitan.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
good.
No,
Yes, and 10 a.m. is 10 a.m. anywhere except Africa, I guess.
no, no, no. From what I've been told, the Americans I speak to, because I remember speaking with this with one of my American friends. So in the US, it's called colored people time.
Colored
So
people
it
time.
depends like how
Oh,
many people. Yeah, yeah. So basically, he has this theory that basically in the entire tropics, basically places in the tropics, like in the
mm-hmm.
Caribbean, parts of the U.S. Let's say he, according to him, there's like in states like in Florida, for example. Florida is a
Yeah,
little subtropical. Yeah, people, especially African Americans there.
yeah.
They
I
are
think,
there to this color people time. So places
I
along
think,
this tropical belt just have this feel
yeah.
good way of life where any time is the right time.
Oh, I really, I don't, I really, I'm very careful with time. I love to be on
Yeah,
time anywhere I'm going, and I think time is so important, you know. And
yeah,
you cannot play with time because, I mean, like if you have to go to a job and they say reach for 9, you reach for 9 unless there's really something that happened. But I know what you mean when
yeah.
you say 10
Yeah.
is any time.
At least now being here, I've become quite disciplined with time now.
Yes, yes.
I become more
Well, that's good
disciplined.
too. Yes. Yeah, because every country you go to will be different, so that's good at
Yeah.
least. Yeah. So let me ask you what is. So I think everybody kind of get a little know something about you now. So did you always have dreams of becoming a writer?
Um, the seed for this writing path, which I'm currently on, I believe it began in my undergrad. I schooled in Nigeria for my undergrad. Surprisingly, I studied chemical engineering at
Mm,
the Federal University of Technology, Owerri, in southern Nigeria as well, in Igbo land. So I remember in my fourth year, that was in the Nigerian schooling system, the fourth year for engineering courses is the IT year, that's the industrial training. So you
mm-hmm.
usually have about 6 to 7 months where you are posted somewhere to some practical industry where you get to learn on the ground, boots on the ground sort of environment. So I remember I was posted to the Nigerian gas company in Warri where I was born, where I was brought up. So the this those 6 months really gave me the opportunity to begin to put pen to paper because before then I would always write on Facebook. I've garnered small like a should I say like a following of readers on Facebook
Mm-hmm.
already. So but in
Yeah.
2016 in my fourth year, my IT year, I had 6 months. So I put pen to paper for this. It's still unpublished till this very day. I called it then the Diary of a Mad Genius. So that was the very first time I wrote anything, and I enjoyed the entire process. So that was in some way that was when I knew, oh, this is the pathway
Mhm.
for me. It's the only activity where I could consider myself being in the zone. I don't know if you understand what
Yeah.
I mean. Nothing
Yes,
else
of
really gives
course.
me that feeling of being in the zone. Nothing else.
Yeah. I think all writers understand that, when you put pen to paper. Sometimes I think a lot of people don't know, like it's in you, but sometimes like
Yeah.
with you being an undergrad and stuff, and you did that for that, and it just happened like that, and then you say, well, oh my God, this is something. So I think a lot of us does just commentate, and some like me, I always wanted to be an author since I was like 5 or 7,
Yeah.
you know, but some of us just commented, but I think basically that is like all of us, we commentate, or we all have this creative genes in us. Everything is
Yeah,
not about being an author, but we are all creative people, I believe.
yeah,
Um,
very true. I believe you.
yeah. What inspired you to write about the I hope I'm right, Atlantic slave trade, particu
Yeah, yeah.
particularly from a Nigerian perspective?
Um, I again back to almost connecting to what I'd said before. Since I've garnered this following on Facebook, then in 2017, I believe, I usually sometimes I write short stories. Sometimes, most of the time, I wrote articles, usually pseudo-scientific articles. So I had
Mm-hmm.
written one like a short story about a slave boy, Jideofor, yeah, who was stolen from Igbo land in Nigeria and taken somewhere in the New World. So
Mm,
the reception I had gotten from my friends, but then I had like a diverse following of friends. I had friends from Europe, friends from North America, Caribbean friends, friends from India, basically friends from the entire world. So the reception I got from this short article was really intriguing to me and very interesting. Why so? Because almost every particular subset of people was interested in this idea, this transatlantic slave trade history, because I'd written it from the perspective now from because most of the time when books of that nature they write from the slaver's perspective, or coming
mm-hmm.
from Europe down to Africa. So this time around,
Yes.
I've written from the African child this time around being stolen from
Mm-hmm.
Africa and taken somewhere to the New World. And I've been inspired by the work of Olada Ekwano. I don't know if you've heard that name before. He published his interesting narrative about his own biography, an autobiography, I believe in 1785.
Awesome.
I had not read it then, but I read the book actually after I've written Tales of Jideofor. But I remember watching the documentary about him and about his
Mm-hmm.
life. It's very interesting. I went to the Birmingham Museum some about 2 weeks ago now, where I saw little write up about him in the Birmingham Museum because in this work for the end of the slave trade for the abolition, he traveled all around the UK, basically all around the world, North America as well,
Mm-hmm.
trying to use his novel and his own personal life experiences to showcase the humanity of Africans. And he was himself, together with figures like William Wilberforce and other notable abolitionists we know, were really instrumental in getting the slave trade to end in, I think, 1806 in the UK here, and eventually ended internationally 1833 or so, even though it continued almost like a black market for 50
Yes.
years until like in the late 1880s before it eventually stopped finally.
Hmm.
So this short story I'd written on Facebook, the reaction I'd gotten, I could tell people wanted more of this. They wanted an expanded version of it. You understand?
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
by some serendipity, in 2019, I came upon a competition. Then Goge Africa. Goge Africa is a travel show in Nigeria. So in 2020, they had to celebrate their 20th anniversary. So they had like a lineup of competitions. So one section was for short story, and it was a short story about African history, African culture. So I remember I wrote, then that was when again I put pen to paper from Tales of Jideofor from that Facebook article I'd written 2 years prior in 2017. I expanded that into a short story in 2019 and submitted it as part of this competition. Lo and behold, in 2020, my work was one of the 8 finalists out of almost 3,000 entries, I believe,
Wow.
back then. Yes. So we have like a voting. People had to vote. So
Yes.
the most voted of the 8 finalists became the best work.
Wow.
Eventually, I finished fourth. I finished fourth due to the COVID and all of that. We didn't get to go to an event in 2020. The event was hosted in 2021. So we went to
Mm.
Lagos. We saw the host of the show. Nick and her husband Isaac Moses. It was very interesting. We had a lovely time. They gave us gifts and all of that. So that again, that was when I put pen to paper in 2019 because of this short story. In
Mhm.
2020, during the height of the pandemic, during the lockdown where we were all trapped somewhere in our various homes, I was trapped in a farm in Nigeria, in southwestern Nigeria, in Yoruba land. It was a very beautiful farm, about 300 acres of land. So I had
Wow.
like this pristine environment, very pristine, very silent, being in
Mm.
nature. So I had about 9 months to actually get the draft. So it was in this farm in Owo in Nigeria, southwestern Nigeria. That was when I decided to actually expand this short story into a full length novel. Then I
Yeah.
had no idea that the book would that the original short story, because I got to know in 2021, that was when results were announced. So I had no idea that it was chosen as one of um, almost 3,000 entries as among the eight finalists. So I had no idea, but just like I said, writing the short story it got me in the zone, and I could tell, oh, there's a spark here. I just need to
Mhm.
keep fanning the flames to see how how big the fire engulfs. So I did that at the farm. It was very enjoyable for me. It kept me busy. Woke up in the morning from the interactions I had with my colleagues in the farm there, just from witnessing that true, because I've never really been in that sort of a rural environment for so long. You could almost tell that, oh, in some ways, the culture of these people here, the practices and all of that, must be similar to how it must have been practiced in Africa 200, 300 years ago. So it's almost as if it gave me like a, should I say, like a window, like a time portal in some ways into ancient Africa. So from the experiences with the villagers in this settlement, and coincidentally, most of because the short story I'd written, the Facebook article I'd written in 2017 was actually inspired by a dream. I slept, as it happens, and I often have stirrings in my dreams. So I wake up with an idea that lingers in my head when I wake up. So from that, I usually expand the story. In this farm in 2020, writing the plot for Tales of Jideofor, much of the plot, as readers have, as people who have asked about the stories have come to find out, much of the plot for Tales of Jideofor is not actually my plot, so to say. It came to me subconsciously from my dreams.
Yeah.
I would wake up,
Mhm.
usually I would have dreams. Sometimes I wake up, I have no idea what I've dreamt the previous night, but there's this thought in my mind, or there's this idea, and I know, oh, I have to put it to paper immediately. And from then on, I would expand. So
Yeah.
almost I should. The book is 3 years old, so I wouldn't call it a spoiler anymore. But the main character Jideofor died. That plot is not mine exactly. It's not mine. It's coming from my dreams as well. So it's almost as if I almost think of it as almost as if I was in some ways like a, should I say, like a medium, because the story feels very real
Yeah.
for people who have asked about the stories, the names from the story, the characters. These are all characters of people I know in real life. These are all names of people I know in real life. So it's almost as if it's a retelling of my own life, but in the past in some ways. It's as if I got
Yeah.
like a window into my past, like almost like a past life story.
Mhm.
So that expanded into what eventually became Tales of Jideofor. Then it was published officially in 2022.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. 3,000 and you were one of the eight finalists. That is like, whoa, that's a great thing. And I hope you always use that and talk about it. So it was like being longlisted or shortlisted. And
Yeah, yeah,
that's
to
a great
shortlisting.
thing. And like shortlisted. So anytime you're doing anything, you must always use that and let people know that you were shortlisted, because I think that is a great thing to use in any like situation or anywhere you go or whatever once it concerns books or whatever. Hey, if I ever
Yeah.
shortlisted or longlisted, I will talk about that forever. But that's great though. From 3,000 people, that is really miraculous.
Yeah,
And congratulations.
it
That
was
is.
shocking. I remember the very night I found that in 2021 because I remember I got enough. I think it was email or so because I'd already forgotten about the event because the short story was submitted in 2019. COVID disrupted everything, so we're kept in the dark, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
So we had no idea what exactly was going on. So I remember, I think I got an email or so. So yeah, so I remembered, oh, 2 years ago, I actually put in an entry for Google Africa. So I remember looking to, I was so sure that somehow, because I writing the short story, then I got into the zone. I could tell, oh no, this is premium work. This is solid. This is one of my best work so far.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember scrolling through the names, first name and not me, second name, third name, fourth name. I had to scroll to the next page. I was number 8 on the list. The very
That
last
is
name. I'm
really,
like, yes,
yeah. Wow.
yes, yes, I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, God give you that. That is really wonderful. 8 out of 3,000. That is a real yeah. I think that is any author's dream. One of a author's dream. That's really
Yeah,
incredible.
definitely.
Um, well, I don't want to ask you the same question, not the same question, but sometimes you ask a question, but you already answer it in the other. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I understand.
what did you learn about yourself or your heritage while writing this book? Did you learn anything at all, or?
No, very much so. Because for writing the book, much of the book is based, it's not just pure historicity, it's
Mm-hmm.
also based on my own understanding of African spirituality.
Yes.
So the reason I call it my own understanding is because I had to do a lot of research. There's this
Mm-hmm.
particular book my dad has, and it's a book on the people of Ila, where I'm from. I remember reading this book.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there's this encyclopedia of African history and African spirituality. I had
Yes.
it was on my laptop. I had to read it. So and from my dreams as well, just like I said, the plot outline for the story. So all of that
Mm-hmm.
merged into almost like an agglutination into what is today Tales of Jideofor, the story.
Yeah.
So I had to learn primarily. I would say what I learned the most was actually a better understanding of African spirituality because today in Africa, no, most Africans today, I would say maybe 90% of Africans today are either Muslims or Christians. So our
Mm-hmm.
own traditional faith is relegated to the background. It's almost
Right.
demonized,
Mm.
basically. Yeah. So, but in the research for this book had shown me, oh no, this is very, very wrong.
Yes.
Very wrong. It's in some ways it's almost how would I put it? Like it's like a vestigial, it's like a vestige of the colonial days where us Africans were made to hate our history, to hate our basically hate our own person. So that
Yes.
still lives off in this backlog somewhere in the minds of Africans today, where we
Mm-hmm.
think back on look upon our spirituality, we look upon our ancestors, and we think of them as barbarians or evil people in some way. So,
Mm.
but the research for this book, it opened my eyes basically. So I wanted others
Yes.
to to eat of this forbidden fruit which I've eaten, which is the book Tales of Jideofor.
Yeah. Well, after this question here, maybe you could tell us what the book is about, and you could read like maybe a page or two or something like that. So I'm going to ask this last question. I don't want it to be boring. As a Nigerian, do you
Yeah.
feel tension or responsibility writing how African societies were involved in the slave trade?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Actually, when I was writing it, I actually had no idea what I was doing. I was just led by my dreams, led by the
Yes.
research I was doing on African spirituality and all of that, on the research I was
Mm-hmm.
doing on my culture, on the history of the transatlantic slave trade and all of that. I had no idea some of the consequences the story I'm telling would have. It was when the book was published in trying to market this book, reaching out to people from all over the world. I remember because the book had done wonderfully well in connecting me to people all over the world. Even before I came here to the UK, Tales of Jideofor had already been in the UK before I came here. I'd already made a number of pen friends, acquaintances from people who are from readers of the work. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember there's this particular lady. She's Caribbean, British, born and brought up in the UK, but
Mm-hmm.
she's mixed heritage. So she's like 50% European, but
Yes.
50% African as well. Yeah, so she's mixed
Mm-hmm.
race. Yeah.
I
So, but
think we are all mixed.
this so this narrative, like she had never come upon this narrative of the
Mm-hmm.
involvement of Africans in the transatlantic slave trade. Most Africans have this opinion, and sometimes I try to trace the origin. You have this opinion almost as if, oh, it's only the Europeans who are to blame for the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm.
Somehow, quite true, Europeans have the bigger share of the guilt to bear.
Yes.
But what we forget all the time is this, because she find it very hard. She questioned that particular idea when she stumbled upon it in the
Mm.
book of the participation of Africans in this trade. But what most people
Right.
forget is that it was actually a trade. It was a trade. So a trade
Mm-hmm.
involves two parties, a buyer
Yes.
and a
And the
seller.
seller.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The buyer in this case is the European. The seller are the African chiefs by the coast, African chiefs, the warlords and generals and all of that. The trade in the 18th century in which Tales of Jideofor is set in, particularly set it in the 18th century, because that was the very peak of the transatlantic slave trade. At that time,
Mm-hmm.
it would probably be compared in terms of the, should I say, percentage of the economic weight it held. It would be compared to the oil industry in today's world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a big business, one of the biggest business in the 18th century. Very
Mm-hmm.
huge. It was somehow interrelated with other industries in the entire world.
Yep.
So African, let's say for example, the African end, the selling end of the slave trade now, it was so well developed, like on the story, where you actually have raids. There were slave
Mm-hmm.
routes along and slave houses where this like a proper industry. People were
Yeah.
kidnapped, taken from their communities. There's a slave route. The slave traders follow. They keep you in settlements for days, for weeks. They are transported and resold. They are transported and resold. They are transported and resold until eventually you end up on the coast.
Mm.
For most of us, it's almost as if, oh, you are kidnapped and 2 days later you are by the coast. No, that's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, probably just as it is in Tales of Jideofor, my hometown of Ila is probably maybe as much as I would imagine 300 kilometers from the Atlantic coast. So taking someone inland 300 kilometers from the coast
Mm.
in the story, if you could compile each of the sales and resales and of Jideofor in the story, you would see that it took him probably as much as 6 months
Mm.
before he ended up in the coast, before he eventually ended up in the slave ship. So it was big business on the African end as well. These sales and resales and sales and resales was like a profit making industry for the
Yes.
buyers and sellers, even on the African continent.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the African continent. And what we forget though is that even though chattel slavery, as it was in the New World, especially in America, especially in the US, was not in existence in our African society, but we had various forms of slavery, various forms of indentured servitude, and all of that. It's normal because one other thing Africans tend to think. It's almost as if, oh, our culture was exempt from slavery. Almost as if, oh, it was the Europeans, it was the Portuguese and Dutch who first brought slavery to us. No, that was not exactly how it was. But why I place the bigger share of the guilt on the Europeans is this. From the very onset, they had orchestrated the trade. Empires that did not want to participate in the trade somehow were forced by the military power of Europe to engage in the trade. Only the most powerful empires could exempt themselves from participating in this trade. And if you should refuse to participate, it means you would miss out on all of the latest technological developments coming in. For example, cannons, for example, guns, better steel for making equipment like swords, arrows, and all of that. So, let's say, for example, a lot of people are unaware, but when Europeans first came to what is today modern day Nigeria, that's the Portuguese. The Portuguese were the first. They had landed in what is today Shakiri, Ijoland in Delta State. So then this territory was under the Benin Empire. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the Benin Empire. Are you familiar with the Benin Empire?
Sorry, what did you say? My
bad. I was saying
on the
British
Empire.
Are you familiar with? No. The Benin Empire.
The Benin.
The Benin Empire. Yeah.
I think I read.
We heard that thing.
I think I may have a little knowledge, but don't ask me a question because I might embarrass myself.
Okay.
You know, but
okay. Before the Portuguese had come to what is today modern day southern Nigeria by the coast, the Benin people were probably like it was one of the most sophisticated society in tropical Africa in general. Very organized. What we have from the diaries of the first European merchants and travelers who had stumbled upon the empire, who had stumbled upon Benin City itself, they were amazed. In terms of development, infrastructural development, there was no city in Europe in the 15th century that was to be compared. Not even London, not even Paris was to be compared to Benin then in its height and days. When the Portuguese had come to Benin, the trade was actually for goods, for ivory, for palm oil, and all of that. Slowly, it evolved into the slave trade. Benin, being an empire, wanting to tax its own citizens and not wanting to sell them off into slavery, did not participate actively in the slave trade. And guess what did the Portuguese do? They found solace elsewhere. They look for other smaller warlords and other smaller chiefs who would be willing participants in this trade. So usually they would incite violence. They would empower these warlords with weapons, with guns, with African fabric. Let's say, like for example, certain tribes, you can still see vestiges of the slave trade in our African society in terms of dressing. Actually, let's say the two active participant cultures by the coast are the Shekiri and Ijo, which are the coastal tribes in southern Nigeria. If you see traditional clothes they wear today, it's very reminiscent of European clothes. They dress with the top hat, they dress with the English vest, and these are considered traditional clothes in modern day Nigeria. So you could almost tell that, oh, this is the vestige of the slave trade because then slaves were bartered for clothes, fabrics from Europe, they were bartered for wine and spirits from Europe, they were bartered most especially for guns. So you could go on to raid more people and sell more people. So so the Europeans truly they have the greater burden of the guilt to bear, but that doesn't completely excuse our African participation. There are African communities and African societies that grew so powerful during this 400 years of the slave trade.
Wow. That the slave trade was a well calculated movement because,
Yeah, it
I
was
just like
actually
how
like
they.
when people like one thing I hope my book would do for readers is to help readers understand that it was actually a trade, and we must understand it from that word as the basis. It was a trade. So there are
Yes,
buyers and there are sellers, and it's
sellers.
organized. Every trade is
Mm-hmm.
organized.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if just like you have governing bodies like OPEC for the oil industries and and various industries.
Yes.
The same way the European powers organize themselves almost into governing bodies for the slave trade, where each nation had they have particular territories they bought slaves from. Like the Portuguese, they majorly focused on what is today the Bight of Benin. So that would be
Yeah.
probably stretching from what is today modern day Togo and end somewhere around modern day Delta State in Nigeria. Then you have the Bight of Biafra, where the British got
Mm-hmm.
the majority of their slaves in from modern day Nigeria. And that stretched from the coast of modern day River State all across to modern day Gabon
Mm-hmm.
in Central Africa. So each
Yeah.
nation had particular territories just to keep the peace, almost like they did in the 1883 conference, the Berlin Conference, in partitioning Africa into the maps, which most of us still maintain to this very day. Even in the 16th and 17th century, in the 18th century especially, they had like a governing body to organize this trade, so it wouldn't cause different squabbles within the European powers. Each European power knew this was their territory in the New World and this was their territory in Africa. This was where they got
Yeah.
their slaves, and this was like, it was very organized. It was a
Mm-hmm.
very efficient system, which was why it lasted for
So
so long,
long.
400
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it was
Imagine
very efficient.
400 years, and it was so
And
good
it
and so
destabilized,
profitable. That's
very,
why.
very
And
profitable. The slave
yeah.
trade
Yeah.
made Europe what it is today. It made North
Yeah.
America what it is today.
Mm.
Yeah, it was from the free labor of slaves. North America became what it is, especially the U.S. The
Yeah.
U.S. is built on the free labor of slaves.
Mm-hmm. I heard back in the day that Europeans didn't know even they never even used to use soap or water. I heard
Very,
they used to
very true.
um
No, no,
yeah,
and
they used to
coming
throw
here,
everything
coming
outside.
here, coming here to the UK, I sort of
Mm-hmm.
understand that setting now because I remember stumbling on. I felt almost as if, are you sure it's not African folklore on sighting? First of all, the very first encounters us Africans on the continent had with Europeans were sailors that probably sailed 3 months all the way from England, Liverpool,
Mm-hmm.
down to Nigeria. And for
Yeah.
these 3, 4 months, these young lads on the deck of this ship, they don't have their bath. They are stinking.
Mm-hmm.
Sailors have a foul mouth and they have a
Mm.
foul body in
Sense.
general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So
Oh
the
my
sailors
God.
were the first slavers. Yeah. So they were the first encounters we had of Europeans.
Yeah.
So the very first encounters we had with Europeans were the nastiest kind,
Yes.
the dirtiest kind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's stuck in the, should I say, in the general memory of Africans that, oh, Europeans are, should I say, stinky.
Yeah.
Coming down here to the UK, living here for about a year now, I remember in winter time from November to about March this year, I came to understand, oh, no wonder the Europe, because in winter time in England here it drops to -5 on certain days.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cold.
Cool. Yes.
So you have to think of it from this understanding.
Mm.
It took so much effort to get warm water
Yes.
that every warm water you got was for cooking and drinking.
Right.
In Africa, ultra till this very day, people go from the farms. Usually, our farms are situated close by streams, close by rivers for irrigation purposes. So usually, when you are done with your farm, guess what? You go have a chilling swim.
Right.
Yeah, and our African culture, most of the oldest African culture, being a tropical place, was really big on cleanliness because, of course, being a tropical place, there are a lot of germs and a lot of vectors to carry these germs. For
Yes.
example, in the UK here, you hardly find mosquitoes. You hardly find mosquitoes.
Yeah.
In the winter time, you rarely ever saw houseflies. In the winter time, you could keep like a meal. How would I put it now? Like you could keep your meal in the kitchen, and it's so cold in the
Yeah.
kitchen, and it would be in the kitchen for probably 4 or 5 days without going bad because the kitchen is almost as cold as a refrigerator
Cool. At the
because
fridge. Wow.
it drops. Yeah, it drops below zero.
Yes.
So when you think about that, you can almost see there's less concern for there's less concern for cleanliness because
Yeah.
it's so cold for germs to survive in the first place. But
Yeah.
in the tropics where the Caribbeans are, where Africans are, where Asians are, we were really big on cleanliness because if you were not clean, it's so easy to transmit germs. In most of our African culture, there's this focus on ablution. So before you eat your meals, you wash your hands. Before
Yes.
you step indoors, you wash your head, you wash your feet, you wash your hands. That has always been part of African culture. And
Right.
because from our ancient past, we've always been big on cleanliness, most of our ancient empires and kingdoms had already developed some form of antiseptic or soap, or disinfectant in general. So all the way, it was the ancient Egyptians who invented toothpaste. So Africans
Yeah.
have always been big on cleanliness. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember reading an article about how I think it was the Moors that was during the Islamic Golden Age in the 8th century or in the 9th century. It was the Moors of North Africa who took soap for the first time to
Yes.
Iberia, that's to Spain and Portugal.
Yes. To the
So
Europeans.
before Africans took yeah, before Africans took soap and other form of disinfectants to Europe, they had nothing of that sort in their culture.
They didn't know
So
what
yeah,
soap or nothing was. They were clueless. Ew.
they, they didn't
Thank
have
God I wasn't living in that
basically there
time.
was no need. I remember watching this documentary some years ago about how in the Middle Ages, that was between the fall of the Roman Empire in the fifth century after Christ till about the very early resurgence of the what we refer now as the Renaissance in the 13th and 14th century, most people in Europe actually had their bath like two or three times their entire life.
I heard
Usually
lads,
you had
lads
your
like
first
me. Oh my God.
u-
I would have
usually
two
you had
or
your
three
first
baths the
bath
entire life.
when
You
you were
like
born. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
you had your first bath when you were born. Then you usually had another one during your baptism. Then you had another one when you had your marriage. Then you had your last
Mm.
one when you died.
When you die, oh my God, I couldn't
Yeah.
survive. Thank God I'm born in this time
so,
because I don't no, I couldn't survive.
so all of European cities were so dense. The idea of like a city in today's understanding is actually like a European invention. Our
Yeah.
African cities were quite populous, but not as choked as cities are today, where you have millions of people living in a few square kilometers. It didn't used to be so for our African society. There was some room for space. There was some room for individual independence, which is somehow
Right.
lacking in today's modern society. It's also the reason. Also, I remember speaking with this my friend. He's from Sri Lanka. He's a biologist. So he told me if you look across the tropical zones of the world, most of our dishes are very spicy, from the Caribbean
Yeah.
to tropical Africa to India, much of the tropical regions of Southeast Asia. Yeah, our dishes are very, very spicy.
Yeah.
One reason why is this: when you eat spicy food, as most people who do eat spicy food have noticed, you tend to sweat a lot,
Mm-hmm.
it clears your nostrils and all of that. basically what that is doing is it increases the metabolism of your body.
Yes.
So, and that is exactly what you want in such an environment where germs are easily spread. You want your body in a very active state. So those spices actually keep you healthy.
Healthy, yes.
It became, we think of them as spices now, but for our ancestors 2,000 years ago, they were medicines. They were a necessity in the dishes because if they were not in those dishes, most likely you would contract one or two ailments from somewhere. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because your metabolism was low. You
Low,
needed your
yes.
metabolism very high with each meal you ate. Yes. And much of these spices they contain vitamins and minerals, which are basically
Mm-hmm.
the medicines your body utilizes for repairs and all of that. Which is why till this very day, our tradition just slowed down of spicy dishes in tropical parts of the world. In most parts of the polar regions, foods are basically bland. There's no need for spicy food. There's no need.
Oh, I cannot eat bland food. Mm-mm. That have some taste. Caribbean people love food with taste and spices. Oh, if it's bland,
No,
no,
it's
we
the
don't
same for
want it.
Africa. Being here too, I'm also I'm really intrigued as how like the cuisine of Caribbean folks and the cuisine of African, especially West African folks, is essentially the same thing. You know,
Yes, very.
have you heard of jollof rice before?
Of course,
You heard of
and fufu and all
yeah,
these
yeah,
things. Yeah,
yeah,
because
yeah.
my
You know,
sister, she have a lot of friends from different countries in Africa.
yeah,
Even the Haitians and stuff, they used to cook these things. So I ate a lot of that and it was so
exactly,
tasty.
exactly,
And over here
exactly. I
as
just
well
wanted
have
to say that
African restaurants with people selling those kind of things as well.
this stuff
So
is true.
yeah, that is a real well, who didn't know before about the Atlantic slave trade or anything about the slave trade? Well, we got a wealth of information tonight. Could you tell us a little bit about your book and then just read if it's a passage or something from it, if you don't mind? And that will be, yeah.
Well, Tales of Jideofor is a transatlantic, is a historic fiction based on the transatlantic slave trade. So it follows the life of the protagonist, Jideofor. Coincidentally, Jideofor is named after my elder brother, who's
Mm,
called Jideofor in real life. So he follows his life from Ila in modern day Nigeria, in Igbo land, where I'm from, down to the Caribbean in Jamaica. So
mm,
it's a story of dreams. Just like I said, most of the plot outline for the story had come to me from my sleep.
yeah.
So I consider it a story of dream. I consider it a story of destiny, and I
Mm,
consider it a story of love. It's a love tale in the story. And
yeah.
Jideofor ends up in Jamaica. He meets Mary Jane. It's a
And
very interesting tale.
how old was the character when he got captured?
How was the what?
The
Say again, please.
little boy, the young boy.
Yeah, yeah. How old he
When
was?
he got, how old was he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was the oldest of the 12 kids captured from his little hamlet of Okomege.
Oh wow.
No,
They
with
captured.
the Africans being made, yeah, in the story, 12 kids from his little town was
Wow.
kidnapped on the very day.
Mm.
So he was the oldest. So
Oh,
in our
he was.
African society, in our African society, we didn't measure time, calendar
Mm.
year, the way
Yes.
Europeans measure it now.
Yes. Yes.
Usually, what we have today as the 12th calendar month is a solar calendar, and I think it
Mm-hmm.
came upon in Greco-Roman times, which is why a number of the months are named after Greco-Roman characters. July is named after Julius Caesar. August is named after Augustus Caesar, and
Mm.
June is named after the Roman deity Juno, and all of that. Mars is named after Mars, the Roman god of war.
Why my month
So
have to name
in
after
our
Julius Caesar? July.
yeah,
Uh,
July, yeah, July. So, like, how would I put it now? In our African society, yeah, our calendar, most African society, our calendar was based on the lunar cycle. So we had a lunar calendar,
Yeah.
which is in some ways much more appropriate. In the lunar calendar, you had 13 months instead
Yes.
of 12.
And Japan has, or
Yeah,
China, the lunar calendar as well.
true. And
Yeah.
the lunar calendar follows the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the solar calendar, it ends in the very peak of winter in
Yeah.
December. So the new year, January, begins at the very peak of winter,
Big, yeah.
which shouldn't exactly be the case. In most ancient cultures, you see the year begins with the start of spring. So
Mm-hmm.
March should be the, which is why in the you could almost see the historicity of that even in the solar calendar which we maintain to this day. There's a reason why September, the sept is coming from the Latin root word sept means seven. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oct means eight, right? Nova means nine. Deca means 10. How come sept, that is seven, is the name for the ninth month? Is actually because the calendar begins with March. When you start counting
Right.
from March at the beginning of spring, the seventh month is September.
Yeah.
So our African way of time measurement was way different from what the
Yeah,
Europeans had. In some ways, I believe. Sorry for cutting short. In some ways, I
that's
believe
okay.
it's almost why we still have this so-called African people time, colored people time. It's because we had our
Mm-hmm.
own way of computing time, basically.
Yeah, because I heard they changed the calendar. Growing up, that is January is not the first month, but
Yeah,
man
very
do
true.
all kind of things
Very,
and change everything. So you didn't really know if
very true.
when it's December, you didn't even know if it's not really December, it's some different month, but it changed everything, you know. So
Very
give
true.
us it's
So,
been an hour now
uh,
and I don't want to bore anyone. So if you
yeah.
don't mind maybe reading a little passage or something from your book,
Yeah, now I
um,
do. There's a particular section of it. Let me just see if I can
and tell
find
us where it's available so people can
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is it. It's from the very part one, Africa, my Africa. The book is divided into 8 parts. So this is
Okay.
part one, where Jideofor is still in Africa.
Mm,
So this is chapter three,
yes.
Jideofor's first day at the farm. So I didn't really give you a particular age for Jideofor, but most likely from what I've described in the book, he
Mm-hmm.
was most likely between the ages of 14 to 16. And I didn't give a
Okay.
particular age because
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like you see how it is in Jewish culture, where between the age of 13 or 16, you have like a bar mitzvah where
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
essentially become a man. So
Yes.
he had like, instead of a bar mitzvah in Igbo land, you had your initiation into the masquerade court. So
Right.
he already had that. So he was no longer a child. That is the very introduction to the
Mm.
story. So
Okay.
I'm about to read from chapter 3, and
Okay.
it's a dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dream. So chapter 3, page 18. So it goes, the very last paragraph on the page 18. He was no longer in the middle of the jungle, but in the nexus of a sprawling metropolis, much bigger than the nine sister communities of Villa put together. It looked like he was in a thriving marketplace. The place was humongous with gigantic buildings, gates, and monuments. There was no place that he had been that he could compare it to. He had heard tales of the great city of Edo and the stories of merchants who had come from the west, but even such descriptions felt minimal in comparison. The atmosphere was hot and dry, with the sun high in the sky. It looked as if the dry season had been ongoing for years on end. He soon realized he was dressed in white linen, with hard leather sandals bound to his feet. He had never seen anything exactly like this, thought more of putting them on. Strangely enough, He had heard of the queer white linen and leather sandals that the princes and emissaries from Great Edo put on, again from the tales of merchants who visit Ukumege Market Square. His cousin, Wandialo, had once come back from Ajaji Market with a little sample of this strange textile. In a distant corner just far off sight, he saw a spectacle with a little crowd building up around an open-air canopy shade. Underneath the canopy were women, preteen boys and girls, bound together in a continuous chain of rope. They looked like what he would imagine ghosts to be, very pale and skinny. They were ridiculously light-skinned, much lighter than he was. They were dressed in an attire that seemed made from hemp. Just in front of the shade were merchants of dark ebony skin, bargaining for the women and children. He drew closer and realized the buyer spoke a funny tongue he had never heard before, not even from the most traveled merchants he had ever come across. Lining their eyelids were dark pains that reminded him of what the beautiful maidens wore during their dance performances in their coming of age ceremony. Many wore gold jewelry that shone brilliantly in the sunlight, contrasting their brown skin. All this while he observed that no one acknowledged or even noticed him. He appeared more or less invisible to the bustling crowd of people and animals. Jideofor was bemused by this realization. He drew much closer to the canopy with the bound slaves, and was startled when one of the slave girls strayed him with her eyes. She stopped her sobbing and beckoned to him. He was beyond words when this girl spoke to him, not in the funny tongue he had heard earlier, but in his own language, in Igbo. Save me, my young prince. Please set me free. Let my people go, she said sternly, while still holding his gaze. You must remember the truth. You must remember who you are. You have to shepherd the flock home. Free their minds. For slavery is only of the mind. It is not this rope that binds my people, but the rope around their spirit, around their mind. If my people remember the truth of their past, they will be able to build a future of freedom on the foundations of this truth. When you remember your past, 1 million, water child, you must let your faith in the truth lead you to your faith. You must remember your past, Jideofor. He screamed his name, and her voice resounded again and again, as if in an echo. Jideofor suddenly awoke to the voice of his father screaming his name. Jideofor! A tropical storm had suddenly formed and was about to let loose, raising wind gusts. Jideofor awakened to the commotion of his cousins and uncles packing up their hoes and other farm implements they had brought along. Wake up, Jideofor, his father said softly this time around. Seeing that he was dazed and confused from his slumber, Jideofor stood up, greeted his father, who was now smiling at him, and joined in the commotion. He dusted off his body and immediately grabbed his farmer's hat by his feet. He ran faster than anyone else, having been refreshed by his slumber. A distant rumble of thunder gave him an eerie feeling of deja vu as he ran home. The end.
Yay. Wow. Interesting. I will read that
Yeah.
and give you a review. That's very
This
good.
is the
And
book
can you
cover
tell?
now.
Hmm?
I said
Sorry.
this is the current book cover,
Right.
but if I'm going to get it remade,
Remade.
probably I'll show
Mm-hmm.
it to you, Hazel. I'm going to
Yes.
get it remade and republished, so with a
Oh,
different cover.
cover. Mm-hmm. But
Yeah, in preparation for the book two of the series. Tales of Jideofor is part of a trilogy, so the book two,
yes.
Once Upon a Lifetime, is about to be published as well. So, but I want to
Okay. That's
follow up with this. So this is going to be remade and republished as well with a different
right. That
cover.
is wonderful.
It looks like
Yeah.
this, but a little different.
Yeah. Well, you can tell the people where they can get your books, where it's available. And one more question.
Um,
What did you,
yeah.
when you finish? Go ahead.
No, carry on, please.
No, where you could get your books. And one more question. What did your brother say when you named the character after him? Was he surprised or excited or
He had no idea. He had no idea until the very book was. Although
probably?
he must have had an idea
Mm,
because right
mm.
from the Facebook story,
Ah,
the Facebook short story, down
yes.
to the competition I entered it in 2019.
Right,
That's the
right.
Google African
Yes.
Association. So slowly I've been building it over the most people, like from people who've known me all these years from my Facebook writing, they've always been familiar with the name Jideofor. I just picked the name because first and foremost I was connected to the name. Then number two, each of the names in the story, the Igbo names in the story, I ensured that they were likely names that were born by people in that day and time about 300 years ago. Most of the Igbo names we have in today's Igbo land have been influenced. Most Igbos today are Catholics, Anglicans, Pentecostals, and all of that. So most Igbos today are Christians. Like
Mm.
95% of Igbos are Christians. Yeah,
Yes.
so that has influenced the naming culture in Igbo land. So most of the names as presented in the book are
Mm-hmm.
chosen those names because I was certain that these names are not the modern day Igbo names. These are names
Right.
from our ancient past. These are names most
Mm-hmm.
likely born by somebody 300 years ago in which the book is set. So
Yes,
Jideofor is a
because
very powerful name. Usually, Jideofor is given to the first son of it means Ofo in Igbo land is like a insignia of authority. So Jide Ofo is a compound term. It means hold or take take authority. So
mm,
it's usually given to the first son of the family.
yes.
Yeah.
Because they changed all our
And
names. So my name was Kunta Kinte back in the day. I don't know. That is from roots. Maybe I am part Igbo, you never know.
yeah,
But we have to
no,
search
no,
our
no.
DNA.
Most of you folks from Trinidad and Tobago, I think some aspects of Yoruba cosmology and Yoruba history still survives in Cuba, still survives in Trinidad and Tobago,
Yeah.
still survives in Haiti. You know the
Mm-hmm.
the voodoo culture and voodoo religion is coming from
Yeah.
Benin, modern
Mm-hmm.
day Benin, the country. Yeah, modern day Benin is like 20% Yoruba. So a number of the deities in the voodoo culture, in the voodoo religion, somehow are related to Yoruba deities. So Yoruba culture is among all of the African spirituality the most
Mm.
preserved in the new world. Most likely has to be the Yoruba culture because
Okay.
you still
Yoruba.
have religions like Santeria in Cuba. You still have
Mm-hmm.
different sorts of religions found a way to
Yes.
incorporate Yoruba deities into the
Mm.
folklore. So you
Yeah.
still have Yoruba deities like let's say Shango. Have you heard of the term Shango before? Shango is
Mm?
still very popular.
Shango. Yes, I
Shango,
heard about, yeah, and I
Shango,
think it have a lot of people here who are Shangos as
yeah,
well.
Shango
Yeah.
is the Yoruba. I think Shango is even a
And
character in
Orisha,
the
there's Orisha
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Orisha is like the collective term for these deities. The Yoruba
Mm-hmm.
cosmology is very, very, very rich, very,
Mm-hmm.
very rich, very interesting. So
Yeah.
several aspects of this cosmology still survives in the Caribbean, still survives in South America, still survives in North America.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, thank you for coming on. Although I didn't see you, but I know
I
what you
couldn't
look like already.
see you.
You've seen me,
The
but
same
I'm not
here.
seeing you. But that's okay.
No,
I
no,
don't
no.
know.
I can't see you. I wonder why I
Oh, you
can't see
can't
you.
see me. I
I've
could
been
only
speaking to
hear. I thought you were
no,
seeing.
I can only hear. I've been hearing the
Oh,
blank
well,
signal before.
I don't
But
know
at least, like you
why.
said, I know exactly how you look. I've known you now since 20. I think as soon as I published this book, that was when I met you. That was in 2022, I believe.
2022. How time flies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a very interesting take on the Atlantic slave trade, and thank you so much
Thank you
because I
very much.
saw a lot of people don't know a lot of things about it, but I'm sure everybody who is on tonight and who will look on the video in the days and weeks to come will learn something very interesting, you know, and take
Yeah,
away. And maybe who knows, they might go and do a little search on their
yeah,
DNA or
yeah.
their ancestors and see, well, you know, well, what am I made of? Where did I come from? That kind of way.
It's
So
exactly what
thank
I have.
you.
Thank you
Yes,
very much. Yeah,
thank you for
thank you very
coming on, and I so appreciate it. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Until next week for next
much.
episode at Chatterbox Chronicles Live at 5. Say your
Thank
name again.
you.
I don't want to pronounce it wrong.
Uh, my name is Ace Mokwenye. My
Ais.
pen name is Farastein. Yeah,
Yes,
Farastein
I
is a
remember.
compound term. Farastein, it came from two different names, like
Right.
Faraday and Albert Einstein. So
Yes.
in high school, we call high school secondary school in Nigeria. So in secondary
Mm-hmm.
school, I had two factions
Yes.
who called me two different names. So I was
Yes.
called Faraday by certain people. I was called Einstein by certain
Ooh.
people. So somehow, before I would graduate from secondary school, it got merged into Farastein,
Yes.
and it's
I
stuck ever since. And
I
I've been bearing it till this very day.
very good. Awesome. I see it have somebody here say very interested, but kudos, Farestin. I don't know
Yeah,
if that is
that's my
also a
sister.
Nigerian guy or a girl.
That's
I
my
don't know. I'm not
sister.
seeing. Oh, that's your sister. Hello. Hello,
Yeah.
sister.
Easy.
So have a good
Yeah,
night. I know it's after 11 there already
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's
That's
after 6. So, yeah. So have a good night and thank you everybody for tuning in. Yes, we'll
Thank you.
meet again.
Of course.
Have a great night and thanks
Thank you
again.
very much.
Thank you,
Yeah, bye bye.
everybody. Bye.